ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್ ಟು ರಶ್ಮಿರಾಜ್ ಬ್ಲಾಗ್ಸ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡತಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾ. ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್ ಟು ವಿಂಡಿ ಸಿಟಿ ಶಿಕಾಗೋ. ಶಿಕಾಗೋ ಇಸ್ ಫೇಮಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಟೂರ್. ನಾವು ಆಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಸಿಟಿ ಕ್ರೂಸಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಬ್ಯೂಟಿ ಅಂತ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಊರದ ಮಿಡಲ್ ನದಿ ಅದ. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದು ಶೋರ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್. ಇದೊಂದು ವಿಚಿತ್ರ ಮಾಯಾಲೋಕ ನೋಡ್ರಿ. ಇದು
ಒಂದು ಬಾಯ್ಲೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಬಾ.
ಸಿಡಾಗ್ ಶೋರ್ಲೈನ್ ಸಿಡಾಗ್ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ರೂಸ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಹಾಫ್ ಆನ್ ಅವರ್ ಕ್ರೂಸ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಂದ್ವಿ. ಅದು ಚಲೋ ಇತ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ವಿಂಡಿ ಸಿಟೀಸ್ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಐಕಾನಿಕ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಟು ದ ಲೈಫ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಶೋರ್ಲೈನ್ ಟೂರ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಹೆಂಗಿರ್ತದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಲೋ ಆಗಿರ್ತೈತಿ. ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಟೂರ್ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಕ್ರೂಸ್ ಅಲಾಂಗ್ ದ ಶಿಕಾಗೋ ರಿವರ್. ಈ ಶೋರ್ಲೈನ್ ಒಳಗೆ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಲರ್ನ್ ಮೋರ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಶಿಕಾಗೋ ಸ್ಟೋರೀಸ್, ಶಿಕಾಗೋ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರು ಈಚ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಇದನ್ನು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಇದ್ರೊಳಗೆ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ ಅರೌಂಡ್ 1 hour ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೋತೇನೆ.
Some of their design, a little bit of their engineering, but most importantly the historical context of why Chicago looks the way it does. Let's start with the word Chicago. What does Chicago mean? Chicago comes from a French interpretation of a Miami, Illinois word, Chicagoa, which very roughly translates to striped skunk or smelly onion. Really adorable names for the city here. Here in Chicago, we are on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi tribes. And this region has been home to dozens of other tribes as well, including the Peoria, Miamia, Kaskaskia, and Kickapoo nations. Long before European contact here, this region was of great significance for their trade, agriculture, transportation, and commerce. And despite the forced removal, oppression, and displacement of these early indigenous residents, Chicago is still home to one of the largest indigenous communities in the United States. There are about 65,000 indigenous residents in the greater Chicagoland area, representing over 150 tribes. And their flourishing community today is a testament to their strength and perseverance. Atmosphere at 2,000 feet, and then the financial crisis of 2008 killed the project, and then it was just like a 75-foot hole for like 15 years, and now we got this building that's going up. There's going to be another one right next door. Some new residential buildings there. I feel like some of those people back there are going to be a little upset that they're losing their views of Lake Michigan, but you know, such is the way. We're going to be heading onto the Chicago River off on our right there. It's where we're going to spend most of our time this evening. As I mentioned, out to our left, back out that way is Lake Michigan, one of our 5 Great Lakes. We're not going to go out there tonight, and that's because of the Chicago Harbor Lock that is out there. It separates and controls everything that passes between the lake and the river. Boats will $1 tickets for kids. There is a bar on those boats as well, in case that was... We got some river traffic out tonight. Some of these party boats like to hang out in the middle of the river. We're all awake though. Look at that. This evening, this one is carrying Lakeshore Drive, a very frequented roadway here in Chicago. It was renamed recently the DuSable Lakeshore Drive, and that name change was to honor the first permanent non-indigenous settler here, Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, often called the father of Chicago, the founder of the city. We'll talk more about him towards the end of the tour. I had a man from France recently on my tour, and he did not like the way that I pronounced DuSable. So that is how we say it here in Chicago. Very Americanized. As we come out from under the DuSable Lakeshore Drive, we're gonna get another stunning view of a lot of these buildings down here. With the pink clouds and all the buildings are starting to be lit up for the evening in their various colors. We'll get some lovely views. Feel free to take any pictures, get those cameras ready. We can all take it in together. It's like a little portal into the city. I can, you know, get out of your pictures for a minute. Welcome to Chicago, everybody. Looking stunning this evening. Okay, I get to take a picture too. The skyline is different every day. I want to start with my favorite. And that is this tall, wavy building on the left there with the 3 towers. It's just a few years old. It's a mixed residential building, apartments, condos, a hotel down at the base. It was originally called Vista, has been renamed the St. Regis, and it's designed by Studio Gang, who is headed up by lead architect Jeannie Gang. And the St. Regis here is the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, but even cooler than that, the St. Regis is the tallest building in the world by a woman-led architecture firm. So proud to have that here. And it's got some cool features. Of course, it has these wavy walls, and together with the various tints of blue on its glass, not only is that meant to mirror the river below, but it's also meant to provide everyone who lives in the building with equitable amounts of sun shading. It helps to temperature control the building. And then if you look at the 3rd tower, the tallest one, towards the top, it looks like floors 83 and 84 are unfinished. That is on purpose. It's because late in the design process, it was realized that that 3rd tower is going to sway a little too much. And we want buildings to sway. It's good. It keeps their foundations from cracking. But you don't want it to sway too much. That could be a little nauseating. So they put in 2 blow-through floors, which do pretty much exactly what they sound like. They allow wind to blow through the building instead of adding force to the side. Blow-through floor. These white, wavy balconies on its side. From 2009, that is Aqua peeking up there. We will get another good view of that building as we pass in front of it in just a moment. That's another residential building. And the balconies are cool because each one is slightly geometrically different. Each balcony is unique. They range from 2 feet to 12 feet. They all have slightly different curves to them. And it's designed that way because, well, when I'm at home on my balcony, it's a rectangle, as most are, with the same dimensions as the people who live above and below me, swipers. But Aqua was created with community in mind. Studio Gang wants you to be able to go out on your balcony and actually chat with, get to know the people you live with, which I think is lovely. Studio Gang is a local architecture firm. They're based here in Chicago. My personal favorite modern architecture firm. Those are some newer buildings on the river. Now we're gonna hop across. We're gonna look at is off the water a couple blocks. It's a taller tan building with a big glowing dome up on top with a big orb up there, changing colors. That building is the Intercontinental Chicago Hotel, and that dome is part of a decorative blimp dock because the building was completed in 1927, back when we thought blimp travel was going to be the next big thing. Of course, they couldn't have known that the Hindenburg disaster would occur a few years later, bringing a quick end to that idea. But I like that the dock is still there, and I love that they light it up with different color LEDs at night. Very fun. This next bridge we're coming up to out ahead of us is carrying Michigan Avenue. Michigan Ave, great place to go shopping, grab a bite to eat. Similar to the DuSable Lakeshore Drive, Michigan Avenue Bridge here has been renamed the DuSable Bridge, again to honor the father of Chicago, John Baptiste Point DuSable. To the right of that bridge is this light tiered building with the clock tower. It's got some little spires up on top from the early 1920s. That is the Wrigley Building, designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White for the Wrigley Candy Company. Wrigley's Juicy Fruit Gum, Wrigley Field, same people. But in the early 1920s, architects here in the US, they did not know yet what their signature style was going to be. They didn't know what legacy they wanted to leave behind. So in the meantime, they borrowed ideas from other countries. So Wrigley Building here is actually modeled after a cathedral in Sevilla, Spain, called the Giralda Tower. So we call revival style. The Wrigley building is covered in 250,000 glazed terracotta tiles, and they're so delicate, the building must be hand-washed once a year. Just too delicate to be power washed. And those tiles come in 6 slightly different shades that generally get lighter as they go up the building. Meant to draw your eye to the top. A lot of buildings want you to know how tall they are. And then coming out from under DuSable Bridge, we're gonna look straight out ahead of us at this building from 2009. It is Trump International Tower. And this building uses a tool, a style called contextualism, which means it's playing with its context, its surroundings. So you can see that's 3 patio setbacks, and those are 3 very specific heights. The first patio is the same height as the cornice line, the roof line of the Wrigley building we were just looking at. The second patio is the same height as Mather Tower. It's that tall, skinny, kind of rocket ship looking building on the left-hand side of the river there. And the third patio is the same height as the AMA Plaza. It's a dark glass building just on the other side of Trump Tower. It'll peek its face out in just a moment. So if we were to take this building, pick it up, put it anywhere else in the world, those heights of those patios. Main Street Bridge there, you can see half of it tipped up there. It's a fun little sight. You don't see that often. On the right there are 2 of the most photographed buildings in Chicago, usually compared to corn cobs. That is Marina City from the 1960s, designed by Bertrand Goldberg Associates. Now back in the 1950s, Bertrand Goldberg, he was down in this part of Chicago, looked around, thought, not a lot of people living down here, not a lot of people hanging out in this part of the city. It was very industrial at the time. And he fancied himself a bit of a social scientist, and Marina City was his first big social experiment. He thought, if I can put everything people need all in one spot, then they'll have to move down here. They'll be begging to move down here. So up top are your residences, your condos. Under that is your valet parking. Down below there is your yacht parking, because who doesn't have a yacht? He put in restaurants, offices, a movie theater, dry cleaners, a bowling alley, all these things in horizontal lines and more natural materials, not quite as tall and shiny as its neighbors. As we come up next to the Reed Murdoch here, we look up at the building. You might notice that something looks a little bit off about it. Perhaps because that clock tower is not quite centered. A lot of architects in Chicago do like to honor the city's history. Honor what came before. A beautiful example, the left 2/3 of Builders Building were constructed in 1927, and the right section was constructed 60 years later in 1987. And we can see the architects in the 80s, they updated the style a little, but in general, they used all the same materials, the same designs. Another example is Wells Street Bridge here. We're about to go under. It looks like a lot of the other bridges on the river that are 80, 90, 100 years old. But Wells Street Bridge is only about 11 years old when they redid it. They wanted to maintain the historical tradition of the river, so they put in a this massive building. This is the Merchandise Mart from 1930, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst & White, same people who did the Wrigley building. But this one is now in the signature style of Art Deco. And we are going to see quite a lot of Art Deco tonight. So let's talk about what that entails. With Art Deco, you have your polished Indiana limestone cladding, your vertical racing stripes of inset windows meant to draw your eye to the top, where you have some little setbacks up there. There are also these kind of pest dispenser looking statues out front. They're called the Princes of Retail because this building was originally designed for the Marshall Field's department stores. You have Marshall Field's bust up there, Wanamaker, Woolworth, some other big retail giants to honor that history. Making our way into Wolf Point now. Wolf Point here is the area, so we're just leaving the main branch now. We have the north branch heading off to the right, the south branch off to the left. We will be making our way up and down both of those a bit this evening. And you can think of this area, Wolf Point, as kind of the original birthplace of Chicago hundreds of years ago. This area was home to just the first few taverns, homesteads, trading posts, bridges. But now, of course, it has really come into the 21st century today to move downtown and converting it into the residence that it is today. It was quite thaw the building out, and Then they gutted it, added windows, balconies, other things you need to live, and now it's this cool historic residence. Jumping across the river for Fulton House, no longer in use, but it's a great example of how all the bascule-style bridges work here in Chicago. We saw that with State Street Bridge. So bascule is French for seesaw. So on one end of your seesaw is that big concrete counterweight, kind of yellowish, and on the other end is the leaf of your bridge. So when the counterweight goes down, the leaf tips up. This bridge is from 1907, hasn't been in use for about 25 years. It was made a landmark in '07 though, so it's not going anywhere. And then back on the left are these funny looking triangular river cottages here, very nautical. These are also by Harry Weiss, same guy who did the Fulton House. These are in a style called postmodernism. Now modernism we'll get to a little later, but basically their whole thing was less is more. The postmodernists thought less is more. More is more asymmetry, more curves, more colors. And these river cottages were pretty radical when they were built down on the river in 1988, because for a lot of its history, the Chicago River was extremely polluted and nobody wanted to live on it. We can see the East Bank Club here on our right, this large high-end fitness center from 1980, just a few years older than the river cottages. This built by the mayor at the time, Richard M. Daley, and these were basically a bunch of regulations that just said no. So how does it stay upright? Well, there's a central concrete core going through the building. Kind of see it at the base there. Acts as a sturdy spine. It goes into the earth over 100 feet down. But we talked about it before. We know that tall buildings sway. And with a building shaped like a giant pencil, you don't want it to sway too much. That would be bad. So this building uses it. At the top of this building, inside, there are 12 concrete tanks filled with 160,000 gallons of water that keep partners. And guest partners in another building across the river, just past Randolph Street Bridge. Out on the left, this tall glass building. This is the Bank of America Tower, just a few years old. And this time to satisfy that 30-foot setback rule from the water's edge, guest partner. And then they have these 9 columns that they bundled into 3 kind of tree-like structures to further open up the space down here. And then the glass on its face is meant to be reflective in a way that kind of tricks your brain into thinking that there's more sky there. So this very solid structure feels pretty nice and open here on the river. The next few buildings we're going to look at are going to take us on a bit of a journey through time. We are going to hop in our... You know, the population is now growing. We're starting to build buildings a little bit taller. And Gateway Center 3 here is in a style called international style, international modernism. Called that because you could take this building, pick it up, put it pretty much anywhere else in the world at the time, and it would still make sense. It would still fit in.
Confused like
the 70s. Gonna go back in our time machine one last time. Our final stop is the 1980s. The 80s, the time of style and curves and shoulder pads and curves and contextualism. Brings us to Gateway Center 4 up there on the right. Contextualism. This building, it's curving. Overlay is $800,000. Years. And then in 2008, a movie called The Dark Knight filmed here in Chicago, and this was their Gotham City Bank. And then finally, in 2016, the building was bought and renovated for over $900 million. History. The first one is a very popular one. The Beach Boys wrote a song about it. The Major League Soccer team here is named after it. It represents one of the 4 stars on the Chicago flag. It is the Great Chicago Fire. Branch turn. This officially concludes our story time portion of the evening. We can get back to some buildings. They're all beautifully lit up now. I love this view from down here on the South Branch. Got some good views down here. We have this sort of bubbly concrete building coming up here on the right. Looks kind of like a honeycomb from this angle, at least. It has a dark pyramid roof and a big glowing statue up on top. From 1930, that out there is the Chicago Board of Trade. It's the one right in front of the big Chase sign there. That was the tallest building in Chicago when it was built. The Chicago Board of Trade remained the tallest building in the city until 1965. For 35 years, that was the peak. And the statue up on the roof there is of the Roman god. That it's filled with 1,852 light bulbs. And we see tonight, light is a really important part of architecture. Part of the reason why we like tall buildings is because they look really cool when they're lit up at night. But unfortunately, birds also migrate at night. And when the cylindrical crown was first lit up in 1990, it was so... Tower! Yes, technically in 2009, Willis Group moved into the building and they bought the naming rights. It is officially called the Willis Tower. This building was originally designed not for Boeing, but for the Morton Salt Company. And if you look up at the taller part of the building, way at the top, right in front of the Boeing sign, there's a long rectangle with 6 circles cut into it. They're like 6 portholes up to the sky. And that's there because if you're designing a building for a salt company, then you want to make the building look like a salt shaker. The residential building from 2016. On the right is Wolf Point East. That's another residential building from 2020. A building. And if you remember the 80s from our time machine earlier, we remember that contextualism was pretty big. So Nuveen here, it is curving. I'm just spelling rumors on my tour. Pier. The pier was built in 1916. It's 3,300 feet long. It was the longest pier in the world when it was built. It did serve as a naval training base in World War II, hence the name. And then from 1945 to 1965, it was home to the Chicago branch of the University of Illinois. And then finally in the 90s, it underwent major renovations and became the entertainment center it is today. Chicago Shakespeare Theater is out there. There's a children's museum on the pier, a bunch of restaurants, a bunch of shops. Great place to get a souvenir if anyone's looking. It also has that Ferris wheel being lit up blue tonight. That is the Centennial Ferris wheel from 2016. Line here. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to take a seat, and we're all going to need to remain seated until the docking process is finished. It's a little bumpy at the end sometimes. We want to make sure everyone stays safely inside the boat. We will know.
Historic building ಇಂತ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು modern buildings. What a treat to an eyes. Oh my god. ಕಣ್ಣು ತುಂಬ ಬರೀ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಅದ ನೋಡ್ರಿ. ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರಲ್ ಟೂರ್ ವರ್ತ್ ವಾಚಿಂಗ್ ಅದ. ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಟೂರ್ ನೋಡಿ ಬಂದಮೇಲೆ ಕಣ್ಣು ತುಂಬ ಬರೀ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಅವ ನೋಡ್ರಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಶಿಕಾಗೋ ಮಿಡಲ್ ನದಿ ಫುಲ್ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಭಾಳ ಚಂದ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾವೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್. ಅಮೇಝಿಂಗ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರಲ್ ಟೂರ್. ಹೋಪ್ ಈ ನನ್ನ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಟಿವ್ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಶೇರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಫಾರ್ ಮೈ ಚಾನಲ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾ.
Ya no la quise,